postponed a meeting in January, hoping to have one around March. And then current events kept us from meeting in person. And then now is our first meeting in a little over a year. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And now I would like to pass it off to Ari Delay.
Sounds good, Mike. So good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. Mike asked me to do a quick briefing on some of the stuff for La Honda Fire that we did work there in the CZU Lightning Complex, and also just some brief comments about the SC4 ham radio group and their interaction, and just our overall interaction, some of the volunteer groups that are out there. So with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen for you. Mike, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, you're looking good.
Great. So if everybody's familiar with the Red Barn, this is a picture of the fire itself from Highway 84 right at the Red Barn. And, you know, for us in the community, it's a pretty ominous sight to see the fire in such close proximity, I would say, to our community. And this was just kind of an interesting shot that I took as we came through town one of the days along the way on the fire. And there's quite a few slides here. I'm just going to kind of breeze through some of these things. To share with you this is some of the spot weather forecast information that came from the National Weather Service. And then also, if you see in the center of the screen there, it was some of the lightning predictions that were out from the National Weather Service, and some of the lightning prediction services were there. As you can see, in the middle of the night there, prior to the fires actually being started, you see the lightning series that came right through the middle of the Monterey Bay and up towards the San Francisco Bay Area. So it was a pretty significant series of lightning. It's pretty unprecedented for our area. In my time, I've lived here my entire life for 47 years. That was I would say the most unprecedented lightning series that I've seen in my time. So pretty significant. And we had some weather alerts come through, some red flag warning condition stuff, and also from the National Weather Service as well. I'm going to try to advance some slides here. This is actually a picture I go back one here for you. Got from Chief Cosgrave. This was taken out from the coast over the Pacific, and some of the lightning coming in to our area. And if everybody would, I'm sure most of you were there that evening and were aware of some of the lightning that was coming through the area, and it lightened up the sky. So early on, it was pretty benign. A lot of activity from the lightning perspective, but really not much fire activity coming through until later on in the preceding days. Just so we chased lightning around all the resources. CAL FIRE, the local volunteer fire departments, and others were chasing lightning throughout the area. And just for us in our participation, if you see, this is right at the entrance to Pescadero County Creek Park, up there at Alpine Road and the Sheriff's Honor Camp Road. This road itself leads to the Sheriff's Honor Camp, a prison facility that the sheriffs ran for many years, but is now out of service and defunct. But it is down there at the base of the road, and notice the smoke kind of in the background there. Anyways, we were along with a lot of the other crews were attempting to figure out the lightning, where it was, where some of these fires could pop up, and this is some of the early on smoke along that Old Hall Road drainage that was visible, and we were trying to basically triangulate in and figure out where this smoke actually was coming from. If you see, this picture is kind of interesting. I think this was taken by Brian Osborne from South Skyline area and Castanea Ridge. And you see the smoke in the foreground here. Let me turn on the smoke in the foreground here, where my pointer is in this area. Can you guys see that? Right. That actually turned out to be what they called the 5-5 fire, which was directly off of that Sheriff's Honor Camp Road. That's the main fire that we worked on, and that was on the eastern slope heading up towards Portola State Park, Middleton Tract neighborhood in that area. And then if you see on the top of the ridge here, that was one of the early on fires on the Buteno Ridge. So we took a crew here to work on the 5-5 initially. We had a battalion chief, Tim Schiffer, who worked as what they call the branch. When CAL FIRE goes into a significant lightning siege, they will use what they call a lightning complex plan and divide the geographic area off into branches. And we were working for Tim Schiffer, who was what they called branch 5. And this was the 5th fire located in branch 5. So it was called the 5-5 fire. So this is us hiking into the 5-5 fire, the crews from La Honda. The fire itself that we worked on initially was probably a mile and a half in. So well beyond the initial ability to get hose to the fire. So we were able to hike in with hand tools, and you see a back pump here with water on the firefighter's back and some hand tools and chainsaw. And that's pretty much all we had for a significant period of time. This is us just kind of pulling up to the fire, taking a quick breather. We just hiked about a mile and a half in. The crew taking a quick breather, grabbing some water, and then working on attacking the fire. And one of the important things to note, I think, is that this particular fire is in super heavy timber, and that, that was true for the lion's share of the fire for the CZU lightning complex. The terrain was steep, the fuel was heavy, and although the intensity of the fire initially was very low, it was pretty rough going. So we worked to dig a fire line at the base of the fire and put what they call a trench in underneath the fire line to be able to catch any rolling materials, so it didn't allow fire to get below us when we started working on that fire. Crews took a couple quick breathers here. The fire itself was about 2 acres when we got there, and we worked to get a line surrounding the fire itself. And like I said earlier, pretty low intensity overall as far as the fire in the initial days, and that was true for most of these fires. A significant amount of fires, but very low in intensity initially. Later on in the day, we were met up with 2 CAL FIRE engines, I think 1765 and 1768, and we worked with them to get a line around the fire to get it somewhat contained the best we could. And again, we didn't have any hose. We couldn't. There wasn't enough hose even on the 3 engines to make it all the way to the fire. So we chose to just try to get hand tools around it and cut line around the fire. Late that afternoon, we got a CAL FIRE crew in there to assist us in improving this line. So you can see the line we initially put in was very small, scrape about 2 feet wide, and the CAL FIRE crew came in and helped us improve that line to about what they call a 4-foot scrape. And that's basically improving that line to make it hold better in case the wind picked up or the fire got along the edge of the line there. The 2 CAL FIRE engines and the CAL FIRE crew sat on this particular fire overnight, and we were hiking out of this particular fire. And this is a view when we were hiking out. This is the view looking towards the Buteno Ridge. That same fire that we saw earlier, the 2 smoke columns. This was that Buteno fire starting to build up a little steam that same evening. Just some pictures of the crew moving through. And then I spoke about the fire on the top of the ridge, and that was that 515 fire. It's on basically on the top of the ridge. You see the topographic features here with the map. That fire was located up there above the community of Lomamar. And then through the preceding days, those smaller fires all grew into what we all have seen on the maps of the CZU lightning complex, and it obviously grew in significant amount in size. And we were fortunate, honestly, on the northeast side of the fire that it was able to be contained along the Old Hall Road, which for anybody that is familiar or not, it's basically an old logging road that literally would go from the community of Lomomar all the way to Highway 9 and Highway 236. And you can see in this particular map, that's along this black line. And this is actually Highway 236 and Highway 9 in all the way into Santa Cruz County. So a significant amount of fire line, within San Mateo County. Unfortunately, our neighbors to the south, they took the brunt of things just due to the weather and the wind conditions. So it's fortunate for San Mateo County, but very unfortunate for Santa Cruz County, I would say. This is just some of the stuff we did to try to help keep the community informed. We had our CERT SC4ARES group that worked to help keep fire information coming from CAL FIRE on the incident itself, and heat signatures from MODIS satellite data, and keeping these maps posted so the community had the best information we could get to them. And then also as evacuations started to occur, we would take and steer them to the evacuations maps that were created by the incident itself. We took some of the briefing maps for the incident just to give the folks and the community a heads up on what was occurring, because it's kind of hard for folks to keep informed, and if you're, not everybody's as computer savvy as some. So we try to provide some visual maps for people that would make their way to the fire station to try to get any kind of information they could on the incident. We also try to provide some information to the folks in the community as far as what roads were open and closed and whether evacuations were in effect or not. So we're just basically taking that information from the incident and relaying that, like I said, to the community. This here is Kathleen Moazed. She's the CERT coordinator for branch 3 for the South Coast CERT program. So she's working on that. Inside the fire station here, the SC4ARES group and some CERT folks are answering phones, relaying information, and steering folks to the incident, or trying to answer questions where they can get resources, and trying to provide general information to the public. These are just some overview shots that were taken by some aircraft on the incident itself. Just wanted to share those with you. This, again, I said the Old Hall Road. This is just a picture of some of the crews doing some briefing on the Old Hall Road and getting their folks to work. County Parks on that section of the line was pretty instrumental in working to help suppress the fire. This is actually County Parks' dozer that was on the fire line on the Old Hall Road. And again, the fire intensity on the Old Hall Road itself was more of a backing fire, and the intensity was fairly low. So that fire was able to be held along the Old Hall Road from the community of Lomomar, basically back to Highway 9 and 236. Just going to walk through some of these pictures. On that 5.5 fire I talked about a little bit earlier that we initially hiked into, eventually we were able to put a portable water tank and plumb the fire with hose. So we were able to get that fire hose around the fire and keep it tended. We actually tended that fire for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, that every day we went and checked on it and made sure that the hot spots were, kept down and the fire was in check. This is just a picture of some of the work that the crews were doing along Dearborn Park behind the community of Lomomar. We had some disaster service workers swearing in that we did with the large animal evac group. I saw Robin Camozzi's name on the list here. So this is Laura and the crew from the large animal evac group. So we ended up doing a lot of the disaster service workings, swearing in for the event to help out the county there, actually out in the field on the side of the road as we went along for the incident. One of the challenges that all the crews had along Old Hall Road was this section of the Old Hall Road. The county actually had a contractor that was working on the Old Hall Road I would imagine for at least a year or so prior to this, but this was what they used to call a Humboldt crossing. But back in the day, this was stacked with redwood logs all the way to make this road flat and go across. It was almost a log bridge, basically. But it wasn't a bridge in the sense that it spanned that whole gap. It was basically stacked up with logs. And the idea is that water could move through the log bridge and they would drive over the top of it. They would put dirt. And this is a logging, operation back from, the late 1800s. Well, the contractor, that bridge began to fail over the years. The wood started to decay. The contractor was actually working on repairing a bunch of the infrastructure here. And so the road that normally you could drive through had no vehicular access. Right along here, where my cursor is going, that was about 100-foot drop straight down. And this road was the only access they had in it. So during the fire, the contractor was actually able to punch a road in off to the right here and bring it all the way around so crews could actually make it from Lomomar all the way back to Highway 9 and 236. So the crews from the contractor that were here on site actually were pretty instrumental in making that happen. It's just some pictures of crews mopping up. So the PG&E crews that were working on the fire itself to be able to help secure some of the infrastructure along the way. That's a crews doing repair. And then this is just example of how the community comes together. This is Farmer John from Half Moon Bay. He, right after the fire occurred, he wanted to do something to help support the local volunteer fire department. I don't know if you guys know John, but he grew up actually in La Honda and was a big supporter of the fire department and decided to bring a bunch of pumpkins and donate them so we could have a little fundraiser to support the fire department and the community itself. So it's kind of a nice gesture from John. Just some pictures when the crews go through and they do what they call structure defense. They flag the residences to determine, what the hazards are and things of that nature. So this is an example. This ICS 231 form is what we use to designate. So a crew wouldn't have to go up to a house multiple times to figure out what the infrastructure is at the residence. They would fill out this form. They would tag it at the front of the driveway. And when crews went to go check it again, they would know what they're dealing with when they arrived at scene because the crews would rotate through. Obviously, some pretty significant fire behavior began to develop. And again, that fire moved south pretty significantly. This is a picture from my house right outside my driveway. And this is a picture from Jack Brooks Horse Camp. We did some work with San Mateo County Parks to help them. We just provided the engine while they did some mastication work. The last thing we wanted to do is have another fire spark if a tractor was working in the area. This is one of the local repeaters that serves the majority of the South Coast. This is the Hiker's Hut repeater site that we have in the South Coast. So that microwave link that sits up here actually relays information all the way from Montera Mountain to Pescadero to La Honda and then back over to Redwood City. So this was a critical piece of infrastructure. So County Parks was able to do some clearance around it just in case the fire came near. So we provided an engine to help support them in case there was a fire start from the work they were doing with the heavy equipment. And this is our crews helping County Parks crews clear around the repeater site. This is some of our folks from the large animal evac team, just moving trailers out, getting them mobilized to head towards Pescadero. They had a pretty significant operation working right out of Pescadero Creek Road and Highway 1 as their base of operations, but they initially staged in La Honda and then headed that way. And then this is the old haul road. We talk about it a lot, but most folks, if you've never been out there before, this is kind of what it looked like. This is during the fire, but it shows you it's a pretty tight roadway in the middle of some pretty heavy timber, and the idea was to be able to maintain this old haul road. And again, that went from all the way from the community of Lomamar to Highway 9 and 236. Here's my daughter and I at the firehouse one evening. A lot of the community was super supportive, especially to us in La Honda. They really, without even an ask, came to support the community and the fire department. We were there obviously deployed for a bunch of different days working on the fire itself. And they were able to help us out with meals and things to get the crews that from the SC4 group and CERT folks, large animal folks, and the firefighters supported and fed for quite a few days. We had our local doctor in town helping out with some of the firefighters. Any little ailments they had, they were able to come out and help support with any issues that they had. We had a birthday along the way. The 22nd was actually my birthday, so we finished up on the fire on the night of the 22nd and had birthday cake when we came back into the station at midnight. This is just some of the crews. One of the firefighters from the Menlo Park Fire Protection District had a restaurant that she worked with all the time and wanted to donate some food for everybody. So they came out and provided a nice meal for the firefighters. And this is some more local support for the community. Jamie and Andy from Alice's restaurant coming to help support. And this is just our little DOC, our Department Operations Center at the fire station in La Honda. That's Lisa Chupity and Angelo Dragon helping provide some logistical support and information to both the community and the local residents and the firefighters as well. And this is just a quick brief synopsis of some of the folks that were able to help during the incident. But overall, I would say we were super fortunate that we had such a great volunteer community effort, from the firefighters all the way through the lowest level person that came out to help to just keep things clean, keep us organized and moving ahead. We had the CERT from the South Coast, South Skyline CERT, and also the Coastside CERT folks actually helped out quite a bit and did rotations through. We had the SC4 ham radio group, which is really, really, from a logistical perspective, they were super helpful in getting, logistical support to the crews throughout the evening and the preceding days. The large animal evac group, I can't say enough. Everybody knows it, but the bottom line is they did an amazing job helping the residents get all their animals evacuated, keep them safe, secure all the facilities. The Cow Palace was used as a base of operations for staging the animals, and it was an extremely successful effort. I think the county has really, seen how successful and productive they were with those efforts. So I can't say enough about them. And then particularly for us in La Honda, Charlie Catania is a local businessman that owns our little La Honda Center here. He was unbelievably supportive with us along the way. Jamie and Andy Kerr from Alice's, and then a bunch of local folks that helped along the way. Our relationship working with CAL FIRE and the county fire department and all the other local fire departments throughout the county and the Bay Area. The sheriff's office, we worked hand in hand with them along the way in our community here in La Honda. And this is just a perfect example of, someone was kind enough, and I think this is from Charlie Catania, our local businessman. He went out and purchased a banner on his own accord, thanking all the firefighters for the work that they did. So, so that's just a brief synopsis of some of the work that was done, by our volunteers and the SC4 group and the ham radio group. So with that, any questions you have, I'm more than happy to answer them for you.
One question that has come into me from a few people is if you might make the slide deck available.
Oh, sure.
And also, Ari, you're familiar with the volunteer groups that came in to help out. If you don't mind, maybe leading the conversation a little bit from those that may have participated once we're done with any questions on your presentation.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So I don't know if there's anybody specifically maybe from SC4 ham radio group here that would could start it off for you, Mike.
Jeneen is here, but I can't seem to get my video to work.
There you go.
Hi. What did you want to know?
I think Mike was, you wanted to field some questions from the folks, Mike, in regards to the ham radio group, or?
You know, I think, Jeneen, a question that we would have is, you know, all of us have been somewhat involved in preparation for disasters, talking about how we're going to respond, but not all of us have been thrown into the fire. Now that volunteer organizations have had a chance to, you know, put some of their preparation into practice, would love to kind of know what, you know, what did you learn? What preparations maybe that you did were, you know, well worth it? And then also a question that I would have for any who have responded, any organizations that have responded, where in the future might you need help from either additional volunteers or other agencies? But you were there, you would know more about what's worth talking about. Does that help?
Yeah, so, well, for one thing, as much as I would wish that it was be easy to be prepared, I just don't think you can be prepared enough. And, you know, you can prepare, but you really need to, you just need to keep up with, you know, keeping your supplies ready to go, keeping your, if you're a ham radio person, keep your ham radios ready to go, be ready to evacuate. I mean, those of us who are in emergency preparedness have been telling people that for years, and yet probably most people who were involved in the fire probably came across people who were not prepared. And no matter how many times you sort of had that discussion, you know, people in my neighborhood, for example, didn't have gas in their tanks. You might not be able to get gas during an emergency. People didn't have pet food. We were getting phone calls at the firehouse from people who had refused to leave. And if they did leave, they wouldn't be allowed back in, but they were running out of supplies. We had we had a lot of interesting stories from people calling into the firehouse who clearly were just trying to make up a story so that they could leave and then come back. But I mean, overall, I would say the person who was in charge of the ham radio response was Angelo Gigroni, and he is our ARRL ARES Emergency Coordinator, and he really did an amazing job. He's very detail-oriented, did a great job. I don't think he left the firehouse very often. And, you know, all of his work and preparation really paid off. And I could not overemphasize, you just have to keep preparing and keep thinking about, I was thinking about this the other day, talking to some other people who are interested in getting some ham radio group in their area. You know, I think I've had my ham radio license for 13 years. And when I first got my license, I was only going to get one little radio. And it's not enough. Every time something comes up, you think, I thought I was prepared, but look at this, I'm really not. And so you just really have to keep working on it and keep thinking about that go kit and keep thinking about how you're going to communicate. Keep thinking about how you're going to evacuate your animals. I evacuated to my office. I work at Stanford, and I thought I would be there for a couple of days and then we'd come home. But we were there for 10 days, I think. And I thought, if it's going to be longer than that, I will find somewhere else to go. But we were in the middle of COVID, so I didn't want to go stay at someone's house. Red Cross was giving vouchers for hotel rooms, but my cat was so stressed, I didn't want to move him again. So, you know, I learned that for sure. Have a better evacuation plan. So anyway, that's what I have to say.
So, Ari, I think you said that you called out Robin's name of being with Large Animal Evac. I think Neil is on as well. Is there someone from Large Animal Evac that can tell a little bit about how it was to actually be called out and evacuate large animals?
Hi, this is
And
Robin.
you'll need to
Camozzi.
unmute yourself.
Yeah, this is Robin.
Hey, Robin.
Camozzi. Hey, how are y'all? Boy, without Ari's help through the years, we wouldn't be as prepared as we were, and we still weren't prepared enough. But when we were called out, when we were activated, we got up and running and got our first animals picked up within an hour and a half. Pretty amazing for our team. But through the whole event, I'd say, and after the event, we kept saying that there's just, as Jeneen said, there's just not ever enough preparedness or training. You just don't know what you don't know. And you just have, this year, we're going to spend the year training our teams up and educating people to be ready, to be prepared to leave before they need to leave, especially when you have large animals. Or animals in general. You don't want to wait till the last minute. You don't want to wait till you want to go in the pre-evac, not in the you have to leave evac. Because with the large animals, you're stressed, they're stressed. And then of course, we're trying to get out there and help people train their animals to load and get them loaded. And whether it's a donkey or a 400-pound pig, if you own it, it needs to be able to load up into something that you can move it. And there are a lot of people out there that aren't that prepared. So yeah, we found that there's more people that aren't prepared than that are prepared with their animals. They just never thought they'd have to move them. And I think it's a reality that can happen again and again. So the event for us went long. We had we returned the final animals 33 days after the beginning of the event. The scope of what we did was way beyond what we ever imagined. We learned a lot from it. We had a lot of volunteers. We had over 190 volunteers during the event. For us, the community went above and beyond, all the way from Marin and Sacramento. I mean, you name it, people came out and helped us with the animals. And we had 13 holding areas. Those holding areas, we were stretched thin. So what we learned is that we really need to have, in a big event, and at some point we have to pick a number. And when we start to get over that amount, we need to be able to go to one holding area, because 13 holding areas to manage was a lot. So once we pulled Cow Palace, that was a relief for us. And so those are all the things that we learned. As I said, we're training and we're put on our calendar, 12 trainings, 1 a month through the year, and then 1 event to go out and educate or to outreach to the community and try to see if we can't help teach people to load their animals or get go bags, or we've already done some ranch visits where we've gone and worked with people and showed them, you know, the best evacuation plan for their property, how their gates may be changing those a little bit or adding extra gates for in and outs so their animals don't get trapped in barns. So lots of things we have on our calendar, and we look forward to anybody that's interested in joining. Well, another thing we learned is we don't just need people who are going to load animals. We need people who are going to be sitting at a desk on a computer helping us keep spreadsheets, fill out our 214s. That paperwork that they all need is important. Ham radios, many things. I can't thank Angelo enough for, boy, he was always the voice of calm with us and always there to help us. There's so many, but Angelo, as Jeneen said, was, wow, beyond and above and beyond. So thank him. That's all.
This is Ari back. I would say one of the keys to your guys' success, I think, you know, at least in my mind, is your foresight to embed the ham radio folks with your trailer teams along the way. And that's been a premise that you guys have been working on for all the years that I've been working with you guys. And I think that really helps in those areas. A lot of the areas we had infrastructure was still there, and we had cell phone coverage and things like that. But in the areas that were very remote, I would imagine that had been, a very successful,
Yes.
venture having them embedded with you guys.
Yes. Yeah. And Angela was always there to answer questions when me especially didn't know how to work my ham radio, but I realized I have to get better with that. But yeah, absolutely. It has been definitely a benefit to have the ham embedded with us, and to have our trailer teams. Having a lead car was huge. To have that lead car go in and look things over for the trailers before those trailers get in there. Therefore, we weren't causing a pile up or a clog in any one of those roads. So yes.
Robin, this is Julie Barr. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I just want to thank you and your team for all you did. I know Large Animal Evac evacuated somewhere north of 1,000 animals of various shapes and sizes. But I'm curious, did you had a primary staging area down near Pescadero? Did you have your own ICS structure to run that?
Yes, we did. So my daughter Laura was at the staging area. She held the staging area for the entire time. And then I was staged at Feed and Fuel pretty much 24/7 for the first 3 days. And then after that, I worked from home and then back at the Feed and Fuel. We, at that time, I have 4 phone lines there, and I had internet, and I had a cell phone, so I could really bring in a lot of calls, and I can utilize my own employees at that time when we weren't getting enough volunteers to help us with phones and computers and paperwork. So I utilized the team at the feed store.
Right, and did you organize the functionality of your team around traditional ICS pillars like logistics and finance and operations and so forth?
Yes, yeah, yes, we did.
And Robin, if you can refresh me on the gal's name from the county that worked with you guys through OES.
Lori Martin Fazel.
That correct. I can never remember it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so they were able to work directly where they are, and she was pretty instrumental in getting the cow palace secured for you guys for staging, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Once we had initial contact with you, Ari, within about 48 hours, Lori Morton contacted me, and she became our liaison to the OES. And so we were in contact by text and phone and emails 24/7, really. And she was able to, at one point when I got to my 11th holding area, so as I was setting up, I'd set up a holding area, and when I was a halfway full in one holding area, I'd get another one set up. So I was right away, my team was running out. We were setting up a team, and they were going to the next holding area to get ready. When we got to number 10 going on 11, I contacted her and I said, okay, this is getting too much. I'm running out of team members. And I mean, there were plenty of people, but we needed people who knew how to follow the incident command, how to set up what we had planned and everything. So I was really starting to roll over. My teams would train one team and leave and go to another one. So at that point, Lori was able to pull cow paws for us.
So Robin, I think you touched on this a little bit, but I'd kind of like to ask the question, not just of you, but of any other organizations that might be reporting out. And, that is before we're facing a disaster. I mean, we have our training plan, our recruitment plan for volunteers. And if somebody asks, how can I help? We usually say, well, affiliate yourself with an organization, go through their trainings. But it sounds like when you're on the scene and the disaster is, this big, you end up having to rely on spontaneous volunteers. And I'm wondering how might the message change if, for example, somebody were to ask me from the community, how can I help? It seems to me that my message of, well, you need to attend their trainings, enroll in a organization, possibly should change based on the needs of the organization that's there, and would just kind of like to hear any feedback.
Like, I can take that one for you. I would say we have to capture those folks through the official process, you know, and get them sworn in as disaster service workers. You know, we have a specific criteria. We can do it for CERT out there in the South Coast, but any other disaster service worker volunteers really have to be pushed through the county process and get sworn in that manner. So we really wanted to dissuade, you know, people from trying to be just spontaneous volunteers. I mean, you can't negate all of that, but in an official capacity, I think we always want to steer them towards the process and getting in the system.
Yeah. For us, with the spontaneous volunteers now after the event, although we appreciated all their help, more often than not, because they hadn't had the ICE training and they didn't know how to follow incident command, there were a lot of glitches, which we had to double back and go back and help. So, and that was part of our learning process, is just always put them at the bottom. You know, they're just doing, unfortunately, the menial jobs that have to be done, cleaning the chicken coop, you know, the things that just need to get done on a daily, but none of those jobs that that really, you know, the financing, the spreadsheets, we had to find team members to be able and train, you know, our trained team members. So we really want to build our team. We realized that our team was, although we did a fabulous job, we were strapped for energy by the end of it, I'll tell you.
Yeah, we had a similar circumstances a lot of times with the fire department, and everybody wants to help fight the fire, right? You know, but during the fire is not the time to determine you're going to be a firefighter. You know, there's training and safety gear and all those things that come along with the job. And it just, sometimes those things are actually a distraction of trying to put the fire out and do the things that we're trying to do in the background to help support the mission. And I would just say that we want to always push them towards the official channels to get included in the incident.
Pat, just go ahead, jump right in. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, I just had a couple of comments. I agree with Jeneen and Robin that we're never as prepared as we need to be. However, the training and the practice and the drills that we do does pay off. I live in the neighborhood of Portola Heights, and we've been practicing drills and you know, evacuations for years now, probably 5 or 6 years. The evacuation process went very, very smoothly because of our phone tree and because of our GMRS infrastructure, radio infrastructure that we have in place. My horses were prepared and they jumped right in those trailers at 2 in the morning with the fire blazing where they could see it. I mean, the fire was right on the ridge opposite us. And it took less than 5 minutes to load 4 horses and out, excuse me, out they went. And then, of course, there were some residents that remained behind. And because of that GMRS radio infrastructure, they were able to keep in constant contact with each other. And we have ham radio operators that stayed behind as well, who were in constant contact with the DOC and La Honda. So we were able to get information directly to our residents throughout the entire event. So it does pay off when you work at that preparation.
And then Mike, I think Chief Cox is from CAL FIRE is on the line as well. But one of the things that I wanted to point out is something new, and they're working on rolling out to all the communities throughout the county, is the evacuation process. And I think that was a really, really important success on the incident itself, at least from my perspective, where citizens could actually go and visualize where the lines for evacuation, they would know when there's a warning and an actual evacuation were to take place, and how those things integrated into the overall system of SMC Alert. iPods and WIA, and all those systems that are critical during an emergency. We have some challenging terrain throughout the South Coast where not all those areas are served by either internet or cellular service and things, but those things all in combination, I think, were a key success.
And Ari, and as you were talking about the evacuation and being able to visualize that, I think I recall from the CEAP meeting that the Zone Haven map is being used for mudslides as well. I mean, it's a resource that's continuing to be used.
That same community map is up for the mudslide and debris flow planning and infrastructure planning that they're working on currently through the county with CAL FIRE and OES and the Sheriff's Office. Jonathan, are you on the line? He's on there.
I'm here. You caught me doing dishes. Sorry.
There you go. I was just speaking to Zone Haven and the success of Zone Haven for the CZU complex and the importance of it.
Yeah, I think, we're, for a little background for everybody, we are the first county in the state who kind of jumped on board with Zone Haven to build out a platform that manages evacuations a little bit more holistically. And we were still about 6 weeks away when the CZU fire broke out from actually launching it and going live in the county. And luckily, they, like everyone or most of the people on this call, stayed up for 3 days straight to make sure that both San Mateo and Santa Cruz County were successful. It's still early days integrating it with all the current systems, but I agree it was definitely the right platform at the right time. And we're really proud now to have one place to be able to communicate with the public regarding evacuations. And I think, it's only going to get better from here as we build it out.
I had just a comment about what I saw from Zone Haven. I mean, I was not one of the, direct volunteer responders, but like many in the community, was avidly following what was happening. And I did have time to check out some of the mapping for some of the other fires in the state. And I was very impressed that in the case of CZU, there was great information that was across counties. While when I looked at some of the other fires in the state, there would be one county using one system, and then another county might be using a different color code. So I was just very pleased that there ended up being just a few sources of information that you could go to and not have to change over and refigure color codes.
Yeah, Mike, that's a really insightful observation. I think on the Glass fire, there was 3 separate evacuation maps for the incident because of the different jurisdictional boundaries. I will say we were the first to get on board with Zone Haven. There are now 10 other counties in Northern California who either signed on or started to work with Zone Haven to get their county on board. So it seems like it's becoming a little bit more standardized across the state.
I believe Chief Chief Cosgrave is on the line. He posted in the chat session for anybody that's interested, the link to the Zone Haven maps there in the chat.
Are there any other groups that maybe want to report out just on what their response was for CZU and a bit of their experience? Now would be a good time.
Chief Cosgrave, the Coastside CERT helped out La Honda by opening, first of all, staffing the DOC on a rotational basis to supplement the La Honda before the area was excluded. And then we moved back to the DOC in Half Moon Bay. And I think Jeneen, Jeneen mentioned that people will do anything to get information or get into the fire zone. What was happening a lot, people would go to the Half Moon Bay High School to try to get a pass to go into the fire zone. And then they'd go to the police command post at the City Hall area where the EOC is. And then they would come to the firehouse and they would change their story, get bits of information, and do that. So people might have good intent, but they do what they need to do to try to get into the fire zone. The spontaneous volunteers and the volunteer management. We had people trying to dump stuff at the firehouse that we didn't need there, right? So two things that happen in a disaster is people want to help by showing up and they want to help by bringing donations. So those are two critical needs at the beginning of any disaster that all of us in all the organizations need to plan to have a plan for, to better organize volunteer management and the donation management. So just wanted to add that to the mix.
I think you can just jump right in, Jim.
I just wanted to build on what Chief Cosgrave said, and this is under the heading of cross-branch assistance and cross-jurisdictional assistance. I think someone from La Honda contacted Cynthia Sherrill and asked if a backup or a parallel radio center could be established at Station 40. I think that was on Tuesday evening after I'd gotten off shift with the sheriff's office. And she called me and I called Harry. And so we put together in a short period putting the equipment up that was already staged at Station 40 by Chief Cosgrave. So we had a parallel system up and running within 2 hours, and we ran that for 3 days. Russell Bissonette was one of the first operators there, along with me, and we staffed it with 2 people for about 2.5 days full time. So I think that's a good example of how different branches can reach out to each other and get assistance. The other thing was you have to improvise. I was on duty that day with the sheriff, and my captain called me and said, "You're a ham radio operator, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I want you to take your equipment, go down to Pescadero High School and relay messages from La Honda to the Pescadero location." So that's what I did for a while too. So that's cross-departmental kind of assistance.
I think the thought was at one point that depending on which way the fire were to proceed, if it were to head towards the community of La Honda and things were, as from an information perspective, start to get compromised from the ham radio, they will be able to have a backup plan and test out all that infrastructure that tied in with the Half Moon Bay. So nice work, Jim.
Just a point of information there is one spot at Pescadero High School, which is 70 feet south of the gym and equidistant from the sides, where you can get a signal out. If you're anywhere else, it doesn't work.
Did you mark the spot for everybody, Jim?
I did. And when the sheriff's communication unit rolled down there, I said, "Okay, come right here, park right here. Don't go anyplace else."
So we did hear a little bit from CERT, from ARES, Large Animal Evac. I'm wondering, see a few people online that did some work with the Peninsula Humane Society. Any comments on CZU response? Okay, I'm going to call out specifically. I see Allison on. I see Julie on. I'll give it a count of 2, and then maybe Jim Hawley, are you on?
I can respond to the
Oh, great.
PHS
Thank
question.
You, Julie.
Sorry, I'm driving. It's hard to unmute and drive.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we were stationed up at the high school evacuation center once things moved there. Volunteers were manning a table with PHS employees, the animal control officer specifically, and they had 2 to 3 animal control officers and 2 to 3 trucks there at any one time, and then people could come to our table and report animals that had been left behind on their property, and they were asking if we could do wellness checks, not us, but the animal control officer. So we would take down that information, and then that was relayed to PHS over in Burlingame, and then they would dispatch animal control officers if they were cleared to go into that area. They had some pretty interesting stories of trying to catch peacocks and camels and other interesting fauna. But yeah, they, like the large animal evacs, they had to get a police or civilian escort to get into a lot of the places they had to go to. So I think we manned that for how many days, Allison?
I
Where
was just
PHS
wondering
there?
the same thing. It seems like ancient history now. I want to say a couple of weeks, but we were there pretty much from the very beginning until morning until about 11 o'clock at night every day. I want to say it was a couple of weeks, but I honestly don't remember. The other thing that we had available was food and crates, and provided information about having animals sheltered at the Humane Society. If people couldn't get them over themselves to Coyote Point, then the animal control officers, when they were able, would shuttle them over, and they would have free care for 30 days if necessary. That was the other service that was provided.
And also the Red Cross were providing a list of hotels because they weren't renting shelters, and many of those hotels agreed to accommodate people with their pets, but not all of them. So, so there were some people that needed a safe place to house their pets, and some people didn't want to go to a hotel, but after a week in your car with 2 dogs and a cat, it gets crowded and funky. So for some people, they were surrendering their animals temporarily.
Mike, you asked about the Red Cross. I was not directly involved with using PHS, but we always use them for shelters. They typically show up, they'll set up runs, they'll do whatever it takes. They'll provide food, they'll provide carriers, and some of that was going on during the CZU fire, but I can't give you any details. Julie sounds like she's got more detail than I know about in terms of their use in the recent fire.
Well, we didn't. So I think what you're talking about is if Red Cross had set up a shelter, the default plan would be for PHS, if there was going to be a shelter there for an extended period for the humans, that we would set up an adjacent shelter for their pets, because Red Cross doesn't allow people to come into a shelter with their pets. So this is a way to draw people into a shelter who otherwise wouldn't come to a shelter because they wouldn't know what to do with their pets. So, but because of COVID, Red Cross had a different strategy. They had to pivot to the motel model. So PHS created a parallel structure to accommodate that.
I would like to just offer one little piece of advice for people who are evacuating with a cat. Don't plan to sleep on an air mattress.
It's on your planning list now.
Yeah, that lasted for 1 day. But now I have a nice cot like Ari has at the firehouse. It's very comfortable. But for most of the 10 days I was in my office, I was sleeping on the concrete floor.
And Mike, before it gets too late, I just want to use this opportunity to really thank all the the NGOs and disaster service worker folks that we had doing all these different jobs. Honestly, there's probably 100 people that we won't even know that did things to help out. But specifically, that all the CERT teams from all the different branches, SC4, ARES, Ham Radio Group, Large Animal Evac, Red Cross, PHS, all of those folks really, from a volunteer perspective, really stepped up to the plate for all the communities on the South Coast to help out and make it successful. So I just wanted to, take this opportunity to make sure that we really thanked them. Just an amazing effort, and all the years Chief Cosgrave and myself been working on the coast for a long time. I'm not there anymore, but I'm still here in La Honda. But all those years worth of training and drills that we've done, all really kind of came together and paid off, I think, for this effort. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Ari, for a great presentation. Did you need to leave before the end of the meeting?
Yeah, I'll be out of here in about 15 minutes.
Okay. Jim, did you have anything more just about Red Cross in general for CZU or Red Cross current activities?
Well, I'm mostly focused on what we're doing now, and basically our focus has to do with the potential debris and mudslides. And we're currently working and coordinating with both OES and HSA. And additionally, we're participating in a joint community effort, essentially a planning effort a little bit farther down the chain with Puente and PMAC, and also South Coastside CERT is also involved. But in the event of a slide, Red Cross will do what we normally do, and our main focus will be sheltering. And that sheltering activity will be not only managing the shelters, but we will bring in health service workers, we'll bring in mental health folks, we'll have a logistics team that'll be involved, and lots of other support services, including calling in PHS as we need them. But I want to mention our model for this is going to be primarily hotels. And depending upon the hotel and the situation, we'll still be doing feeding as we normally do. And also, we might, depending again on the nature of the sheltering and the disaster, we also do remote feeding, which is essentially taking out clamshells of dinners, it might be breakfast, lunch, or whatever, or dinner, food with clamshells, and take them out to the field and set up a meeting area and feed people out in the La Fuera, where they live. So that's basically our plan. And also, I wanted to mention, we've heard several comments, and I think Ari talked about this, but I was really blown away with organizations that I've not heard about active in disasters in the past. For instance, Coastside HOPE got very much involved. A.L.A.S got very much involved. Puente is always involved, but they really carried the ball this time. So the folks in these other groups and all the groups were just phenomenal in the CZU fire.
Thank you, Jim. And you had brought up the mudslides, and that's come up as well, talking about Zone Haven. I recall from the CEAP meeting, there was also discussion of the NOAA weather radios being distributed, and that there was a link to a Midland radio, for example. Is there someone that might want to comment on that? Maybe Chief Cosgrave or Ari?
Yeah, both Chief Cosgrave and myself, we had a meeting with OES a couple of weeks ago. They've recently delivered about 20 NOAA weather radios that we have a short list of folks from Lomar Pescadero that they'd like us to get those radios distributed to. We're going to utilize the SC4 ham radio group to actually get those radios. We're going to pre-program them to this area, so it kind of takes away any of the technical difficulties. So they just finished up pre-programming those radios for the folks, and we're going to work on getting those deployed out to the folks that OES has requested us to get them to, and then also have them available. There's be probably another dozen available. And then the other thing for everybody to know is I believe KPDO in Pescadero has those same radios, and they're handing them out to local community members as well. So those NOAA weather radios are important. They carry what they call a SAM, or a sample code. that when NOAA or the National Weather Service makes a flash flood warning or a watch, they will cause those radios to go to an alert mode when they're normally silenced and broadcast a message. I would, remind everybody that the entire South Coast is extremely challenging when it comes to radio communication. So, the ability for those radios to work in all areas is going to be kind of hit and miss, but we're going to try to work to help OES get those deployed as soon as possible.
No, I don't see Marion or is there anyone from Disaster Airlift? From what I recall is they did have a request for a flyover to like check out on a camp, and it gave them sort of the opportunity to explore, what are the requirements when there's a current disaster of getting authorization for the airspace, because they don't want, or they can't interfere with the actual operation. So for them, I think that was a good drill. And at some time after the airspace was clear, I believe they did a flyover. I'm not really familiar with what other what else they did. Is there anybody online that is? I think we've heard at least some from our representatives from our standing committees involving CERT, ARES, Large Animal Evac. We just talked a little bit about DART, Peninsula Humane Society, Red Cross. Is there any other reports from those that are involved in those areas of service that you'd like to participate? Okay, so let me then also ask, I see we have Corey. Are you still on from the city?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, do you have anything to talk about related to either the CZU fire or upcoming, should there be any services needed for mudslide evacuation?
So as far as the CZU fires, the city learned a lot as well as we participated. We worked with the school district to get that initial shelter or information center opened. And we're really grateful for the sheriff's office and Coastside Fire for working so closely with us. Red Cross was there. I spoke with Jim Hawley quite a bit. And CERT, it was great. We learned a lot about communication. I think that that's one thing other than just ham radios, but internal communication, intergroup communication, governmental and volunteer organization information sharing. I think one of the big things we did learn was kind of assumptions aren't always correct. We assumed that this person was talking to this one. And for us, it was a great lesson because we did circle up as a city afterward and say, where is it that we feel that we fell short? Because it's our job to make sure the communication's getting out properly. We can't depend on everybody else because it isn't fair, because everyone else is extremely busy as well. So for the CZU fires, we learned a lot about that. We were grateful that we were able to have Public Works jump and open Smith Field to get some RVs over there in a time of need. We were grateful that the sheriff's office kind of lifted citations for having RVs parked in residential neighborhoods, obviously not blocking driveways, but having people or giving people an opportunity to be able to park somewhere and go somewhere and feel that they have somewhere to spend the night, because we were really worried about RVs being lost and having nowhere to go. And we are working to talk about the mudslide evacuations. We just had our community development department finish some great literature on the coastside areas. We are going to be working on our emergency operations plan that's going to be discussing all of those items, and we'll be working with a lot of our volunteer partners as well as government partners. And I guess just a small city plug, we are still doing COVID testing on Monday nights. There is information available online, but I just wanted to encourage people to get tested. It is free, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Corey. And yeah, just as a shout out, I mean, I had some RSVPs of of those who are attending the COVID testing tonight that aren't able to attend tonight. And I think that's where some of the requests for the recorded meeting came from. So great work. Also see is Mike McKeon on. Do we have anything from County OES? Or is there anybody else from the county?
Right, caught me mid-bite of dinner there.
I timed it that way.
Right, I knew it. In terms of response, I wasn't actually very engaged in the CZU response. My role at that time was tied very much to a lot of our active health crises that were going on with coronavirus. But I do want to just shout out Lori again. I know she's gotten a lot of accolades in this call already, but really she stepped in a very big way, just communicating all of the information that we were getting from the EOC and pushing that information out. And being that it was one of her really first big activations, she stepped in a huge way. I've been very engaged in the recovery aspects of this. And if there's one thing I think, if anybody's been on the CEAP calls or the CERT calls with me, just emphasizing again how important it is that we have these really rich, really strong community organizations that are active and doing things like this to prepare in advance of these storms and in advance of wildfires, all these different things that could come up to bite us. Touching again on what Chief Delay was saying with distributing those NOAA weather radios, that was a really big push from the county, identifying that we do have really big communications gaps there. We tried really desperately to work with the state to put temporary cell towers in place, but anybody who's tried to do that in the past knows how insanely difficult that can be to work with the state on that. Yeah, I don't really have too much to report out. Unfortunately, yeah, again, my role was really focused on finding surge staffing for those nursing facilities that we were dealing with at the time.
Well, really appreciate you joining us. Is there anybody else that would like to report out on either CZU response or current work in the CZU area?
If I can add one more thing, Mike.
Sure.
I just remembered it after speaking to a few people with the county, and I wanted to give a huge applause just to the Coastside community as a whole, as well as the great organizations that reside along the coastside. I had numerous members from the Human Services Agency for San Mateo County tell me how wonderfully involved all of our volunteer organizations were. I went by the high school a few times and saw the numerous donations of food. There was tons of refreshments. There were people there 24/7. People were constantly trying to help each other out. And HSA could not believe the robust amount of volunteers and donations. And I think that that's such a great thing that we're very fortunate to have.
Thank you, Corey. While this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with CZU at the moment, there has been a few meetings with in the formation of the Medical Reserve Corps. I attended a few of those meetings. I'm wondering, Julie, are you able to just give a quick report on the current state of the MRC? If we do hear from her, great. Just wanted to make the comment that there will be a monthly meeting regarding the formation of the MRC, and in correspondence related to this meeting, I'll send out a little bit of information on that. And if you are interested in helping out with that, please let me know, and I'll put you in touch with Harrison Steins with the county to get on the list. It looks like we may be done, at least with the CZU part and most of the agency report outs. I'm going to just put it out there one more time. Does anybody have anything to contribute related to their general volunteer efforts, regardless of whether it has to do with the CZU response?
Mike, just a brief mention that
Yes, Harvey.
the city is working on a long, good operational emergency plan, which I think will be coming out within a few months. And that's a long time coming, but that will involve things like when the EOC is going to be open, which organizations are welcome there, how it's going to be activated, a whole bunch of stuff. So keep your ears tuned. That should be coming fairly soon. Looking forward to that.
Thank you, Harvey. So the next piece that we have on the agenda is just priorities and directions for 2021. And I'm kind of wondering, Harvey, sort of based on what you said of, a plan coming out, maybe at our next general meeting would be a good time to explore a little bit more in depth of how the CEC can be of use. Do want to just ask the question for those who are on right now. Do you have any suggestions for what the Coastside Emergency Corps can either focus on or how we can be of help to your organization? Would love to hear.
I'll defer to Corey. I think she knows more about this than I do.
Sorry, couldn't get myself unmuted. So the question was how the CEC could be of assistance in writing the plan or within the plan. I just want to make sure I'm answering the correct question.
Yes. So really the question is for, any that are online now, whether you're an organization or, the city, the county, is there anything that you would ask the CEC for help with or are thinking would be good for the CEC to focus on? And we'll revisit this again at the next general meeting. So, I'm thinking March, January, February, April, beginning of April is normally when we would have a general meeting.
Okay, I think that I guess for the city at least, in writing this emergency operations plan document, one of the main focuses I think is kind of what the CEC's main mission is. I know that we've talked about that in the past and it's kind of changed a little bit and morphed just depending on this need. And I think that's awesome. I think one great thing would be kind of really nailing down what it is that we want the CEC to do. And I know that in our last CEAP meeting, we did discuss that kind of how that CEAP could work together with the CEC, which I think is incredibly important because they're both webs of information and webs of people. So at least for the document as of right now, and there'll be definitely more information coming out, and most of the groups, so there's many representatives on here, will be hearing from myself or Cynthia Sherrill to discuss your individual group so we can talk about how it fits into this, whole puzzle piece that is the emergency operations plan.
Thank you, Corey. And I see Julie Barr is back on. Yeah, Julie, do you want to just talk a little bit about what's happening with the MRC?
Sure, Mike. Sorry, I'm just walking in. So several of us met with Harrison Steins, who's the MRC coordinator for San Mateo County. We met with him last week, and this is the latest in an ongoing conversation with them about starting up a countywide MRC group. And the plan is to develop a pilot program here on the coast first, and then create a network of chapters through across San Mateo County. So where we are in that process is that the county has submitted an application to form an MRC for the county to either a national or regional approving body. And there's a process, an application that has to be completed. So that's been done. And the woman that Harrison Steins, forgive me for not remembering who she is, at that level has been in contact with him and is reviewing the application, and she and Harrison are going to finalize the details of that, I think by the end of January. Then also in the meantime, Harrison is working with the county supervisors and the county attorneys to address the indemnification and liability and insurance coverage issues for MRC members to make sure that they're covered for whatever actions they take as MRC members, and also to make sure that if they're injured in the course of performing duties as an MRC member, that they would be covered by county liability insurance. And so once those two pieces have been completed, the next step, which we're hoping will take place this spring, is that the county will be sending out a blast email to the community, specifically targeting 3 databases that currently have names of people who have either expressed an interest or who have previously been involved with the MRC on the coast, or who are currently California healthcare disaster volunteers. So they've already been vetted and certified and so forth, to ask them if they would be interested in joining a county MRC chapter. And if they respond in the affirmative, then we would get them into a database, and then from there, it would be a question of developing a communications plan and strategies for and a process for how to call out MRC members to respond to medical needs, emergent medical needs within the community. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you, Julie. And so I think a few of us had been a little bit concerned that, we knew that some county staff time, including Harrison's time, had been paid for by the county for the first year. And when on the call, we had kind of checked with him about, well, will he be able to continue, or will there continue to be staff time with the county that can work on the MRC? And I believe he said that it looks like it's been budgeted for over 3 years, and I'm thinking we're probably in year 2. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Julie. My thought is, well, first of all, thank you, everybody, for spending the time tonight. Very pleased with the turnout. And thank you especially, Chief Delay, for your presentation. Really appreciate that. And for everyone who has participated tonight, thank you. I'm thinking that it would be great if we can just resume having our quarterly meetings, which would place our next meeting in April. Does that sound reasonable at similar time, similar channel?
Yeah.
Okay. If you do have any ideas or suggestions for agendas or programs, please let me know. And any feedback just on tonight? Did any immediate suggestions for April? What could we do a little bit differently, or better, or not do? We did say the meeting would be 90 minutes. I'm having that if we were to end now, we're ending early, and I would like to set that precedent. So are there any objections to adjournment? Thank you, everybody, for attending, and I look forward to seeing you in April.